What's up, everyone? It's Beacon time, baby. I don't know where the hell Mike Ball is. He was just on the show, and maybe he's taking a poop. But we got Chino on the line, and we got China Dow right now for y'all. We're going to be talking about the New World Order today. It's funny when you say New World Order, it's always a conspiracy theory that a lot of people say, but I think it's right out of real life, and you can see it all around you with all these rich people and stuff trying to tell us what to do. They did it during COVID. I think that they're just trying to freaking propagandize us, kind of like North Korea does to their kids and stuff like that, but they're doing it on a worldwide scale right now. Let's hear from you, Chino, about this right now.
So a lot of people think that the New World Order, the Illuminati, all that stuff, all that's fake, and it's just entertainment that you see on like TV or movies. I actually remember George Bush Sr. First introducing it to the world, saying, "We will usher in a new world order by creating a one world government." Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember that one big time, and everybody freaked out when it came to that.
Yeah, I remember like when I was a kid, there were late night. Remember when you stay up late night and there's all those weird commercials, like infomercials?
Right.
I remember the Agenda 21 infomercials coming out on late night television.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Man, you do go back in time.
I've been into the New World Order conspiracy. So what happened when the Canadian government decided to just stop all of their accounts? They froze all of their bank accounts, all of their medical accounts and everything. They weren't able to go to the hospital. They weren't able to go to the grocery store. They couldn't feed themselves. They couldn't afford rent or mortgage. The government just froze everyone's assets. So that's what we're looking at. If we get these like chips, we give the government the power to freeze all of our assets if we decide to protest in a way that they don't want us to, or we disagree with going to war with such and such country.
Well, look at who's decided to show up.
Look at who's tardy for the party.
Yes, I am very tardy.
Are you pooping? Are you pooping?
No, I'm going to rat on myself. I fell back asleep on myself.
Oh, there you go.
I'm going to be very honest. Okay, I could have used that excuse. I could have came in here and been like, listen, guys, I was on the toilet. All right, could use that. No. What ended up happening is I was like, all right, I'm going to sit here and relax after I got up after the alarm. I'm watching the Madhouse. I'm sitting there. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait a little bit before I get up. And then all of a sudden, I was out. I don't know what happened. I was there. I was chatting with everybody. Everyone was there. And then all of a sudden, when I stopped responding to everybody, that's what happened. I fell asleep. So
yeah, figured something.
Oh, by the way, if you guys were confused about the early morning show, that was a Saturday rewind, but put on a Friday. No, it's me and Mike on Mondays. But we're talking about do you think the most richest families on this earth are the ones controlling everything?
Absolutely. Come on, man. And we know who those guys are, and theoretically, we're not really supposed to like talk about them. Otherwise, you're really like, you're not. Otherwise, you could be potentially looking at, being thrown off of different platforms, and that's kind of one of the things that bigger creators are kind of scared to like talk about because they know their channels are on the line. And that's something that is a bummer because we should be able to openly talk about what's going on in our either country and the entire world because they're not just buying stuff in the United States.
No, it's all over the world. And if you noticed, Ray Epps is being prosecuted now. And that was the media darling right there. And do you know how they were calling it an insurrection and all that stuff on January 6th?
Right.
Now the media's new narrative is it was just a protest. because he got arrested and they're covering for him. It's no longer an insurrection. Now it's a protest.
So they're going to change the definition of it later, like 2-3 years later, however many years later, they're going to change the definition of it.
When it no longer serves them.
When it no longer serves the media.
It doesn't fit their narrative, so they got to change it up.
Even CNN's saying it now.
And that's also, I mean, also something trippy too with CNN. Look who bought them. You know what I mean? So there's something tricky up their sleeve too. You know, they got a right-wing guy on CNN now. There's something going on over there too. So I don't know how much longer, honestly, the blue side of things are going to work out, because I just don't see it working out very well for everybody.
Well, if you look at it, and China down on this one, then we'll go to Chino. If you look at it, there's a big uprising against that narrative that they're putting out. And I wonder if I actually think it was an investment firm that came up with that point system for business. You got to be this woke or you're not going to get our money. And it comes down to money controlling the narrative.
What's your question?
Do you see it breaking apart now? You see it with the Bud Light boycotts, the Target boycotts. And they actually did a poll about some major questions and Axios where people were straight up honest that, hey, we're tired of this crap. Do you think that the wealthy are the ones that are pushing this kind of stuff?
Well, of course. Why not? Because they want it to fit their narrative, nobody else's. They got the money. They can do whatever they want. The more money you put into something, the more you're going to get it your way.
Do you think, Chino, that these news organizations should be able to be owned by a billionaire, kind of like the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos?
Well, that's capitalism, right? The ability to buy up different corporations and have one person in control of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That guy won capitalism. Do I think it's right? Absolutely not, because that means that one person, if he decides to be a supervillain, can make the narrative whatever he wants to benefit him or her.
Right.
And become more rich or manipulate the people to start wars, kind of like what we saw during the riots, or more specifically, remember Coney 2018 or whatever it was, or Coney 2020?
Right.
Where they said that Joseph Kony was getting child soldiers and all that and forcing people to do drugs over in Africa, but he's been caught and he was killed for like 5 years prior to that, but the media still pushed it so they could just take people's money. And then it came out that it was like a giant social experiment.
Right. Well, one thing that is very obvious with them is the audacity of George Soros thinking that he'd buy prosecutors all over the country and just let people out of jail for the meanest shit. And then they wonder why their cities are burning right now. But if we, let's talk about a civil war, Mike. Some of the steps of the Civil War, and it's always funny with Biden. He's always saying that you need an F-16 or you need a nuke to take on the United States. And we actually have seen this in Ukraine, where they're taking on a major superpower and out there because they got it together. But there's a couple steps in a civil war. The first one is public discourse, where they divide everybody. But then the second major thing that you need to do for a civil war is control the media. That's what you have to do, is control the media.
Well, it sounds like there's already two of the three that you're going to name here. So we're already in a very bad situation if that's what it's all based off of, because essentially it sounds like you just explained where we are now in our lives. So where are we missing? We're missing one other step, right? So what's the other step we're missing? That's crazy because we're essentially there. We're divided completely.
Each side digs in with their positions where it's no longer where you can debate it. Right now you're living in, and I truly believe this, you're living in 1860 right now. And a few years before then it was boiling over like it is now between the two positions of the North and South. We're in that predicament right now where they've divided us. The media, they got control of it. I honestly think that the elites want a civil war. I honestly believe that, because if there's a civil war,
Population control right there.
well, you got that, and you got no government unity. And what happens? They can send in, a UN or some shit like that. And next thing you know, you fall under their control, because it's historical fact that empires have only lasted 250 years on average. Superpowers throughout history. And we're getting up on that. Come on, Chino. I know you have some shit to say about this one.
All right, which part specifically? So I don't just shotgun information.
Because you will. You will shotgun information. Go ahead.
Just shotgun it.
Go ahead.
All right. Which part first? Let's go into the comments.
Yeah, a lot of people in the comments are talking about the government, and yeah.
Do you think the government's working against the people?
Yes.
100%. 100%. So I'm gonna take back one of the points that I made in our last show last week about the nuclear family. So everything is against the nuclear family, right? Everything is saying masculinity is bad. If you're a masculine man, you're toxic. Women are more incentivized to leave their relationships and break up families and get divorces. Kids are more sexualized in the media, and pushed to, I guess, revolt or run away. And there's lots of other things, such as CPS being caught multiple times trafficking children, or lying to the courts in order to take the kids away from the families. And then we have all these laws that are put in place, really dumb laws, such as people go to jail for whistleblowing, or people go to jail for having an ounce of weed, right? Small things like that can break up the nuclear family. And then what happens? You get, also women in the workforce. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but women in the workforce, what's that actually doing? It's creating another taxpayer, right? So instead of just the man being the breadwinner and getting taxed, and the woman staying at home, making sure that the family is good, now we have man and woman going to work, slaving away all day, paying taxes.
And that actually started, and that's going to be something that me and China Doll is going to be talking about next week. Our generation, Generation X, was always called the Lockheed generation, because we never had parents home. They were always working. We would come home, take care of ourselves. We were like a more independent crew. But what he's saying is right there. The woman, when they did stay home, had a better nuclear core of a family. Go ahead, China. I know you're chopping at the bit on this one.
No, I disagree with that.
Why?
My mom stayed home, and our family wasn't better for it. I'm just saying.
But you didn't. You had a situation though where it was old school.
Yeah.
Where a lot of us, our parents worked.
Yeah, my dad was the sole breadwinner. My mother never worked. She worked one day during their whole marriage.
But can you see where Chino's coming from, where a woman is out of the house working, and how does that affect the kids and the family?
Well, I mean, if you look at the picture, even like when we first had our first daughter, we were both out working. Where I worked we were working to basically pay bills and pay daycare. and it's not an easy task. Daycare was expensive 20 something years ago, and it's probably 10 times more now. But it's like you basically are having somebody else raise your child, or like when they got old enough, they're going home, they got the key to the house, they're letting themselves in, they're watching TV, cooking themselves food, and taking care of themselves.
So, Mike, they took control of the kids by the parents having to go to work.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think what Chino was trying to get at, rather than it be just face value, like, hey, there's man and woman working. No, it's more than that. It's not just the taxpayer either. It's breaking down the core foundation of what the nuclear family is, what is exactly those key words. If you break down the nuclear family, that is the majority of civilization. You destroy that, then you're going to divide and conquer. The more people that you have under your thumb like that and dependent on the system, because a lot of people are dependent on the system to raise their children because they're both at work. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of problems that go with that. So I think it's thinking deeper than just those kind of face value things that can sound, like, oh, that sounds, what's the word? Where they hate women, people hate women, or something like that, or misogyny or whatever. It's none of that. It's just talking about the core foundation of the family unit and breaking that part down. And that is where our complete downfall of this country is going to be from that core nucleus dying out.
When do you think that started, Chino? When do you think somewhere in history there was a point where there was a shift with more government control and the belief that two parents had to work?
I want to say around the CIA times of like the 1970s, 1980s, after like around the Cold War time, where the CIA was really ramping up all their operations, trying to break down the nuclear families, trying to stop people from protesting, trying to make more docile citizens. And that's also when they coined the term conspiracy theorist. So people would stop asking questions and stop revolting against the government and try to quell protests. So if you ask questions, then you're a conspiracy theorist. And now people just associate that to crazy tinfoil hat kind of people.
Well, they're doing that to RFK right now, China Doll. Do you think, because they call him a conspiracy theorist or a vaccine denier, because he was asking questions? And I think a lot of us were asking questions, and it was the media that coined that term, vaccine denier. Don't people have the right to say, hey, how's this going to affect my body? Or why were you able to come up with this vaccine so damn quick? Where, there's other serious diseases out there you couldn't do it for, still haven't done it for AIDS. Yeah, you got your cocktails to keep people alive and stuff like that, but why ain't there a vaccine for it? But you can come up with the vaccine in 6 months for COVID.
That's because I think they already had the vaccine.
But that would be considered a conspiracy. But don't you have the right to ask that?
Oh, you have every right to ask those kind of questions, because you're putting something into your body that you have no idea what it's going to do. I mean, that's just like there's people out there that refuse to vaccinate their children because of the fact that they think that what is inside those vaccines are harmful. But they're not doing the deeper thinking, which, I mean, everybody's got their own choice to do what they're going to do. But you got to go into the deeper thinking, like with mumps, measles, rubella vaccine. Your kid gets mumps and the kid's not vaccinated. That's going to go to all the other kids in the school, and kids can die.
But at the same time,
die from that.
Don't the parents have a right to take control of their own kids. And
everybody has a right to take control of their own kids, where the government shouldn't be able to step in, just like the government shouldn't have been trying to force people to take the COVID vaccine in order to keep their fucking job.
And then they tried to shame
ridiculous. Nurses, doctors, people that were on the front line were losing their jobs over a stupid vaccine. Everybody should have their own choice to get vaccinated or not. I went the longest time and not wanting to get vaccinated. Yes, I ended up getting vaccinated because I was working on the front line, because I was terrified of coming home and bringing it home to the house. So yeah, I went and got vaccinated, both vaccines plus one booster. Do I regret getting the vaccine? To be honest with you, yeah, I kind of do. That's why I haven't gotten reboosted or any of that crap, because I personally felt like shit after getting that damn vaccine.
Do you think it's a conspiracy, Mike, to say that COVID was the first test at the government controlling the people?
Definitely not a conspiracy. It happened. It definitely happened. And they were successful. They are probably sitting back there just sitting like, oh my God, I cannot believe how easily manipulated, how we can manipulate the entire populace of every major city across the United States like that. I mean, just to be able to control where now other people are now getting the weird authority to like tell other people to put their freaking masks on. You know what I mean? Like these people come the government themselves. It's hilarious. They love enforcing it.
Well, that's a thing where they would tell them, shame your neighbor, and it's kind of, you to find the good stuff in Revelations right now. But I just brought it up because, you know, I'm an RFK Jr. supporter. I really like him. He's a down the middle type of guy, but he questions things, and it goes to show you, Chino, how the media will tear you apart if you don't agree with the main talking points.
Actually, this hasn't happened. Well, this has happened before, like in the boomer generation. Do you remember the polio pioneers?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
go ahead.
When polio happened, everyone was freaking out and everyone was shaming everybody, just like how the 2020 lockdowns happened. And the government went into schools and without the parents' consent, took hundreds of children and gave 2/3 of the children, placebos, and the rest were the vaccines, the prototype vaccines. Some children died, but a lot of the children, they were being tested on in the schools without the parents' consent, and then they were given certificates, like honorable citizen certificates, polio pioneer certificates from the U.S. government, and that's all they got. But
well, that just
happened. What?
It did happen. Yeah, in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. But during this COVID thing, and this just shows you how rich people, or the ultra rich, really start interjecting policies in the governments, is Bill Gates. Bill Gates was huge with getting people to be vaccinated, and it came to find out he had a freaking interest in one of the pharmaceutical companies that made it. But how did that make you, China, as a parent, feel about the government trying to shame you into doing something? Now our kids are growing up, but this is what other parents had to be feeling. They had to do this.
What, the COVID shit?
Yeah.
I mean, our kids, yeah, they're adults, so I didn't force our kids to do anything. Our son's 19, he'll be 20 in a couple weeks, and I gave him the choice if he wanted to get the vaccine or not. He said he didn't want it, so I didn't force it on him. But when you're younger, I mean, the hardest part with the younger generation, I mean, they were not recommending it for under specific ages. So it's like the kids under specific ages didn't even get the opportunity if the parents wanted them to have the vaccine.
Well, I'm not talking about the vaccine in particular. I'm talking about the government pushing it on you, lying about it to get you to take it.
Well, the government lies about everything, and people need to start to understand what's the truth and what's the lie when it comes to the government. And most of the time, it's always a lie.
Ain't that true, Mike? And that's when they start, well, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Well, yeah. Anytime they can try to divert you and make you seem radical, like, oh, that you're going against their agenda. Now that's when it'll come to that. It'll come to that kind of term. If you go against their grain, that's what you get. Is you're just kind of pushed off as a conspiracy theorist. But that's the issue. Is you. If you don't want people to investigate, then you have a problem. Like if you're not okay with people questioning your agency and whatever you're doing, then there's an issue. What do you have to hide? I mean, aren't you supposed to be working for us?
You said that perfect, and this goes to Chino, and I know he knows this. Hopefully, you said, Mike, what do they have to hide? Once a year, there's a big gathering of the ultra rich and the powerful, and it's called the Bohemian Retreat. And they do some weird ass shit there. But it is the most powerful and rich people in the world that come to this thing. You want to tell them about that?
So the Bohemian Grove, that is something that was broken to the public by Alex Jones. The guy that everyone says is crazy because he talks about how there's chemicals in the water that turns frogs gay. Well, he got famous from sneaking into the Bohemian Grove and videotaping their rituals. And he videotaped a bunch of rich people getting sticks inside of a blanket that looks like a baby and then burning it. They prayed to a giant owl statue and a giant Buddha statue, and they ran around naked in the woods. And then he got canceled for that. And the media did everything they could to make this guy sound crazy, right? Now, fast forward to modern times, they changed it from the Bohemian Grove to the World Economic Forum. And that's where we get people like Klaus Schwab telling the world that we will own nothing and be happy, and we will stay in our houses and eat our bugs and crickets. That's a real narrative that's being pushed right now.
Doesn't that scare you that some of these rich and ultra rich people get into demonic type of stuff, China?
I think it's disgusting. I mean, what the
But
hell?
does that show you the type of people they really are?
I think so.
Murdering a baby, set them on fire. That's their thing.
They have no respect for human life.
Only their own.
Only their own life. They don't care about others.
They think they're better. See, one of the things with the United States that a lot of people do not know, and you gotta know your history,
which I don't,
is the founding fathers didn't believe you should have a right to vote. That's where the Electoral College came from. They were better to decide the country's future than you were. They actually thought that. And if you look it up, even George Washington believed in that stuff, Mike, that you weren't smart enough if you weren't rich or a landowner to be able to vote and see the direction of this country.
Well, I kind of understand the theory. How are you going to tell me how to run my household if you can't even handle your own household? I can kind of understand the theory behind it, but it's definitely old school. It's outdated for sure, but I understand, and I can totally understand that is for sure probably what happened. It doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I didn't know that, but just so you guys know, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Actually what was brought up, that's why the Electoral College came about.
Yeah, I had no idea that was why.
The Electoral College, and what's even funnier is to show you the power of the party, was two people were running for president and vice president, or actually president, and the second place finisher was the vice president.
That would make ultimate sense. Right.
So you had a situation where you had one party and the other party were in power at the same time, but over the course of this country's history, it totally changed to a party system. And Washington was right. He was afraid of the parties becoming powerful and stuff. But what do you think about the Masonic origin of this country, Chino?
The Masonic origin of this country, honestly, the more and more I learn about like Freemasonry and how it changes into two different things. There's like the clandestine Masons, that's what you see all the conspiracies about, all the scary stuff. And then you got the Freemasons. That's the stuff that the country was built on, the Scottish rites of Freemasonry, right? And that was all about freedom and religion and real hippie stuff, like being enlightened and learning about yourself and nature.
Right.
There's a lot of really cool stuff in that, actually, but it's just you have to be willing to look and learn about all the different types of religions that go into Freemasonry.
Right. You know, you had George Washington was wearing his apron when he laid the cornerstone of the Capitol and stuff. But it shows you the type of power that kind of organization had over people. And I think that's what the scariest part is when organizations have power over the people. What do you think about them saying that the common man didn't have the brains enough to elect officials, China?
It makes people second guess why they even bother voting. I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I was growing up, my dad used to always say, and he voted for every election. He always voted, never fail, always was there, rain or shine. And he would come home and he'd be like, I don't even know why I bother. And I'm like, why? He goes, because the electoral college votes count more than mine does.
Oh, very good point right there. Do you think voting's even a thing, Mike?
Well, it's hard. Coming from the Californian standpoint, it's really hard because you're in a blue state, man. Like, and you're in a very heavy blue state. So I can feel that because it's like, man, no matter what I do, because I have a little bit. Sorry, guys, I'm a red dude. You know what I mean? Like I see things in that kind of way on the conservative side. So I'm gonna vote that way. But yeah, no, it's definitely ton of this whole. Is it the biggest fear George Washington had was the actual party system? So that's ironic that he said that was his biggest fear, and ironic now that we are at a full party system, that's where we only are at, and you can't go one way or the other no matter what, because your vote in California, for instance, like I was getting on about, almost feels worthless, because if I vote anything on the red side, it doesn't matter. I'm canceled out because this is a blue state. So it almost feels like you have no say in your own state.
Here's the quote about parties from Washington. Gradually incline the minds of men to seek security in the absolute power of an individual, leading to despotism.
So he's talking into regards to the parties. So yeah, I mean that the organizations or anything can be ever so powerful that can take over, and that is the fear, right, that he has. And how we've allowed that to happen in every regard, whether it be organizations, people of money that have money that can buy out organizations or companies, and then we have the policy, the politics, where it's a party system. So everything is this divided thing now. I mean, it's men versus women, it's red versus blue, it's gay versus straight, it's everything versus each other now. So why even down to the politics, man, we can't, like, we've got people that don't even want to be family members with each other because one is blue and one is, red, and they can't even talk. Like, what's wrong with our own people, our own families? Can't even get along over politics.
I got called a Nazi by my uncle.
Chino, do you think on his leaving, his Washington's farewell address, he put a letter out to friends and citizens? Here's what he said. I wonder if you guys agree with this. Washington warned that the forces of geographical sectionalism, political fanaticism and interference by foreign powers in the nation's domestic affairs threaten the stability of the republic.
Isn't that what's happening now in California?
That's what I was just going to say. Go ahead.
Oh, my bad. Isn't that what's going on in California and Florida right now? There's lots of really radical immigration laws in both those states, on both sides of the spectrum. The governments have really strong overreach of what they can do to the people and how they can oppress the people and all that. And the corporations are highly invested into these states, the laws that go on into these two in particular states.
What about China inserting itself into U.S. politics by buying off our senators, even our president right now is bought off and paid for, or them buying up farmland all over this country? That's interference from a foreign power, isn't it?
It would be an interference with a foreign power. However, that's also free market trade, isn't it?
Yeah, free market trade. But I'm talking, well, that could be one point of it. But what about them buying up our senators, our president, our House of they're inserting themselves into domestic policy?
I think that's absolutely wrong and abhorrent. But what's the difference between them doing it and BlackRock doing it?
True enough. Now, what's BlackRock?
BlackRock is an investment firm that's been able to buy up everything that we know exists in America or in the world, really. They bought up all the pharmaceuticals, and you said China buying up all the farmland, but in reality, it's actually BlackRock and Bill Gates buying up 90% of the farmland in America. We also have BlackRock buying all of the real estate, the majority of real estate in America. Most cities are owned by BlackRock. The music industry is owned by BlackRock. The media is owned by BlackRock. A lot of people think it's like Sony and Disney, but no, those two companies are also owned by BlackRock. The military industrial complex, weapons manufacturers, water, food, everything you could think of is owned by BlackRock in one way. The power infrastructure. In fact, BlackRock just bought the entire country of Ukraine's infrastructure so they could create the policies and rebuild that entire nation or country.
Yeah, and knowing how long they've even been around is also something that is mind-blowing as well, because they haven't been around forever. You know, it's not something that they haven't been investing since, 1860 and have built this up, forever and ever. No. How long has this been around, Chino?
Get this. They started out as a real estate investment firm. And then when the lockdown started, that's when they blew up and started buying everything because of all the other CEOs from all these other companies. Like 1,300 CEOs just stepped down all at once, in March of 2020. And then BlackRock in March of 2020 started mass buying everything.
Perfect timing with the pandemic and all of that. So
bringing it back around China, how Chino said he was called, what were you called by your uncle?
Oh, I was called a Nazi because I didn't vote blue.
That you didn't vote blue. We have the same problem in our family with our daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we never used to have that when she was younger.
No, she agreed with everything that we basically discussed with her. I mean,
but then she went to college.
She went to college and then she changed her ways. Yeah, I think she was brainwashed.
Do you think that's true, Mike? That's where all these bigger, I think the government really places, that's why the teacher unions on the left is, and you're a conservative, so talk about that. Do you think that's their plan, is to get through our kids through the school system?
Absolutely. And at any given point, they're going to go after our kids. You know, what is the point that every man and woman would never stop, and that's for their kids. At least that you would hope for. I mean, you never know with this type of generation. But I'm not very sure if it's the government that's trying to control the kids, or if it's BlackRock trying to control the kids, or if it's both, or if BlackRock owns the government, who I don't even know at this point. I mean, that's why all of this is a total radical issue. Like this stuff that happened in France that we talked about on the Beat Can, like on our second episode, like that they were storming the BlackRock building in France. I mean, there's reasons why this is all happening. And I mean, and I love that people are in the comments going like, you know, I've seen it before. We're like, who's BlackRock? Like, people have never even heard of it. It wasn't up until like 6 months ago I even knew what BlackRock was, and I thought I was in tune. But it's definitely a control. It's a control issue for sure, no matter what. At the end of the day, control the kids, control us, control everybody.
Now, Chino, you're a Marine, right?
Yes, I am. Spent 8 years in the Marine Corps and then 3 years as a contractor.
So I want to get your opinion of this. George Washington said back in the, a couple years after this was founded, if they got involved in the European war on either side, it could mean the destruction to the United States through division or bringing war to the American shores. Now, with that in mind, this out of the Washington Post, President Biden on Thursday authorized the Pentagon to mobilize up to 3,000 military reservists for duty in Europe, signaling the toll that ongoing efforts to deter Russia and reassure NATO allies is taken on forced deployment across the continent since war erupted in Ukraine. What's that telling you?
Honestly, it's scaring me because Russia keeps on threatening America. If America gets involved in this war, that Russia's going to start bombing us. And they even put out a graphic on what would happen if they bombed UK and they could send us a hydro nuke, whatever, a water nuke at UK and completely destroy the entire country of United Kingdom. Now, that is crazy in itself. And the fact that they have multiple warheads aimed at America on the East Coast is scary. And the fact that Biden just is like, whatever, and still does whatever he wants that we're being threatened not to do, instead of making like peace treaties, like how Trump tried to do with North Korea. Like he's waging wars while also simultaneously bankrupting the country.
But it isn't interesting that George Washington warned of it in his as the first president.
It's very interesting that George Washington warned about it, because what was George Washington afraid of the most is, the crown taking over.
Right,
because over the United States.
There was a big thing between the French and the British at that time, where the British wanted us to get involved, and the French helped us in the Revolutionary War. So everybody wanted us to get onto the French part. But
the War of Independence.
Yeah, can you survive a nuclear war, China?
No, not happening.
But we're being pushed that way by the elites. You got Lindsey Graham out there; he's a schmuck and a half, saying that we should send troops to Ukraine, and if the bombs go off, what a lot of people don't understand, they'll be sipping on freaking whiskey, smoking cigars in their bomb shelter while we're burning at 10,000 degrees, Mike.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a blast to me in the fun sense,
I like your puns.
It's definitely going to suck. I don't know why or anybody at this point thinks going to war over something. I just, it's almost like how Trump was like, okay, like how you brought up North Korea, that we understand that they are one of the most radicalized countries in the world. You can't do anything with them. All you can do is sit down at the table and try to just, hey, understand their viewpoint. You understand ours. We respect each other. Shake hands. You know what I mean? Like, let's make peace. There's a better outcome out of that than what sending troops off to a war that we shouldn't be fighting at this point.
Well, you know, it's our fault that this war happened, right? It is the United States and NATO's fault this is happening right now, because when there was the fall of the Soviet Union, there was an agreement made between our countries that NATO would not expand eastward. And over the decades, it kept on a little bit creeping and creeping up. One thing people don't understand is Russia is paranoid of being invaded because of World War II. They lost millions of people. They almost got kicked. Their ass almost got kicked by the Germans, by the Nazis. Ever since then, they don't want nobody on their borders they consider to be, how can I say it, enemies of the state. But we kept, and Putin said this, you know, before the war started in Ukraine, keep NATO away from us. But what did we do?
It's
Now
all
we
been
got,
all been sent.
yeah, we got Switzerland in this shit now. It's unbelievable. Do you think most wars are started on our side, Chino?
Yeah, America, unfortunately, is definitely the bad guys in the situation. The Empire from like Star Wars, we're definitely them. You know, keep going to all these other different countries and imposing our form of democracy on them. If they are communist countries, like what happened with Cuba or Venezuela, then we put sanctions on them and starve them out. And then you get all the people that are pro-capitalism saying, see, communism doesn't work because America starves them out. And then we get all these other countries on the east, like Ukraine, for example. We have all those CDC or those bioweapons labs over in Ukraine that we found, that we admitted to having. And we have all these lily pads for CIA, like safe houses on all these other different countries. And what are they for, right? It's not exactly gathering intel, especially with all the CIA operatives like coming out and saying what they're doing over there. It's just, it's crazy.
Now, with knowing all this, China now.
Oh shit! Here we go.
And this is last topic for the show is knowing that the United States does a lot of this stuff. Would you, if there was draft, would you allow our son to go, or would you take that ass to Canada?
I would take his ass to Canada.
Why Canada?
Because of the fact that then the U.S. can't take him in a draft. Because that'd be this. No.
Do you know? Do you think that's what a lot of people felt during Vietnam? Because we shouldn't have been there in the first fucking place.
Well, a lot of these all this crap that's going on now. I mean, in my opinion, the U.S. needs to just mind its own business. Why do we always got to get involved in other people's shit? Why do we got to send? Why do we got to send money to other countries when their own country's having fucking issues?
More money.
Yeah, interest later down the line. Money.
I would never let my son get taken in a draft. No, I would,
because it's not.
I would like cut his foot off or something so he can't go.
Because they always say, "Well, it's for freedom." I'm free over here, motherfucker. I don't need to go over there to be free.
My son and Mikey would be best friends, one-legged apiece, because I would cut my kid's. No, my kid ain't going. No. No.
Now let's take another situation. I talked to Vietnam towards and this might hit close to home to Chino, but I talked about Vietnam with China. But Mike, Iraq. Did we have any business whatsoever in Iraq, especially when we found out the government lied?
Chino's like,
No, it had all to do with another interest, right? It had nothing to do with the original said interest. It had all to do with money. So again, lies and manipulation equals money. That's what were they after? I mean, they were after what? Black gold over there? Wasn't that what they were after? What were they after over there on that side?
They claim Saddam Hussein, who worked with the United States, by the way, during the Iran-Iraq wars, that he had bioweapons over there because it just happened after September 11th. And, you know, that was the good thing for Bush. That was his opportunity to go in and finish what his dad didn't.
Right.
And
mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction, and they didn't find a single thing. Would you send your kid to a war like that?
Personally, no. If knowing all of these things in hindsight, right? If I knew all of these and like my son or daughter was being drafted, knowing these things during that time, absolutely not. I would find any way possible. I'd be like, there's no way that you're going to go fight this war for their interest. No. And now when it's something very righteous, I got to give to everyone that does serve this country. It's extremely, first of all, not undermining anybody's service here, by the way. Thank you for everybody that has served. It's definitely got to be hard because once you're in it, I'm pretty sure you kind of realize real quick, like, oh, this really isn't all the shit that we thought it was, maybe, you know? Maybe they get through and halfway through their tour or whatever, they're realizing, wow, this is totally a different thing than what I originally thought it was. Now I'm starting to realize the real issue here and that their eyes probably are opened up while they're actually out on tour.
Before we let Chino answer that, go ahead, China. You're over here. Let me.
I'm actually this is gonna go to Chino because I know Chino fought over there, and I want to know because I mean you signed up, so you knew what could happen signing up for the Marines, right?
Mm-hmm.
What were your feelings when you were fighting?
Well, I joined because I thought that, you know, I grew up looking at the Twin Towers, that whole issue that happened when I was in middle school. I was in 6th grade, actually. And when I went, I wanted to get revenge, right? I was like, I'm not a kid anymore. I want to fight for my country, all that stuff. I came back and I read, I was unfortunate enough to read the WikiLeaks documents. And that made me super depressed. All the stuff that we were doing over there, the reason why we were over there, it was just horrible. We were definitely 100% the bad guys there. The reason why we went to Iraq, I went to Afghanistan. I didn't go to Iraq. But the reason why America went to Iraq was not necessarily the oil. The oil came on later, but Saddam Hussein was trying to switch to the gold standard, all the currency, right? So what did America do? Because if they switch to the gold currency and America is still on the paper currency, we cannot afford to get oil from them. So we went to war because they wanted to push gold instead of, you know.
So it was over a currency ordeal.
Exactly. The same reason why we demonize Muammar Gaddafi over in Libya. The same reason why we continue to demonize every single leader that pushes for the gold currency in Africa. It's all because America wants that control. Because right now we have like fake currency. I mean, it's real, but what is the American dollar?
Paper.
Nothing. It's not backed by anything.
Yeah,
it's just a receipt, like a promissory notes.
Well, you brought off Omar Gaddafi, and it was funny how he was working with us, and so did Saddam Hussein. He kept the people in check. Now you can talk about the brutality and all that stuff, but they know their own culture. We don't know their culture, and that's the problem with Americans. They always stick their fucking noses in everybody else's business. When if you look at a country like Iraq, that's, you know, Babylon right there, man. You're going all the way back to Persia with that, and they got a set way of doing things. And when we try to push on this freedom or democracy stuff, that's going to piss a lot of people off. We do it to ourselves. But when we send in an army that was in 91, yeah, when the Iran-Iraq war happened, we were on their side. And you know what? Actually, you know, bin Laden, he actually worked with us during the Soviet Afghanistan war.
Yeah,
It's
movie
funny.
Rambo 2.
Yeah. No, Rambo 3.
Yeah, Rambo 3, my bad.
Hollywood.
Ah.
Read N. Nelson's comment.
Go ahead. I can't see it.
Mikey, read it.
He says, sure, Chino, myself and lots of others were essentially hired thugs for corporate interests, to paraphrase General Butler, but anyone who lives fat, dumb, and happy is participating in the same scam.
What do you think of that, Chino?
I guess the only thing I could say to that is it's not exactly the same to sit at home and just continue in the system that pushes oppression, and to go over to a war zone and kill people because of that same idea of forcing oppression on your own people. I mean, being the bad guy and how putting people in jail, like putting fathers in jail just because they're military age, taking them away from their families and taking them to black sites, that is not the same as sitting on your couch eating chips and just not caring. It's a lot more damaging, and it's the reason why mental health is such a problem in America, because so many of us in my generation went over there and fought for horrific things, and then we found out how those horrific things were really, how bad they really were. And then we come home and we're given small 10% discounts on things and just told, hey, be happy. Here, take some pills from the VA and just accept things, you know? And that's why 22 a day of my brothers and sisters like kill themselves. It's hard. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that on here, but
oh, you're fine. You're fine. I think that should be a topic for next week, is U.S. involvement in geopolitical wars, and if our people should be sent over there and sold the, you know, it's for freedom stuff. I think it'd be a real in-depth kind of conversation right there.
I think we need to have a discussion on how much military personnel go through, and the fact that when they come home, one, they're treated differently, and two, they're not getting the medical necessities.
That's true,
in
but
life.
you know, you got to admit, society's changed with the Afghan and Iraq wars compared to what it was for Vietnam veterans. You know, there has to be a distinction there, because, well, that'd be an interesting subject for next week.
Definitely. We can dive deep into that next one.
All right, guys and gals, thanks for joining. Don't forget to ride safe this weekend. Everybody be careful out there.